Yeah.
Except that when we do it, we all just get shot in the face and it sucks. I'm just like, man, this sucks. But JKS, he does it. See, that's back-to-back big opportunities for him to shine, and he doesn't miss them. He gets in there, and he just slaps big around.
Yeah. Amazing stuff, isn't it?
Ties it up.
That is not bad. They're running up behind him, and he doesn't know yet. He could have been dead right then and there, but at least he'll get the one kill. That means something. I just don't think he was expecting for them to be that quick. And now everyone needs to take a deep breath here on Complexity. Just stop right now, Rush. Wait for the others to show up. You've got plenty of time. You've got the kits and everything else. They still win some of these fights, but I would say it's so dangerous because let's say Rush just goes down immediately like that. Suddenly, that retake is going to be really tricky. So, good job on Rush. I'm not going to criticize it too much. I'm just saying, you know, they weren't that far away.
That's where JKS wishes he had his M4 instead of an AK.
Maybe
would have been a little bit would have been a bit easier against a hard eco to hold with a more consistent.
Hello and welcome to Optional Rule. My name is Scott. I'm going to be talking about D&D and all things related to gaming, game design, and campaign design. I do this live stream every week on Saturday at 12 p.m. noon, and I hope you'll join me in any of those weeks. Now, currently I'm preparing for my Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign. We're at about session 6. It's been very enjoyable, and we've reached a great milestone this week, and I'm going to be talking a lot about theory crafting for the next stages of the adventure. And if you have any ideas, please go ahead and bring them up and write them in the chat or the town down on the tavern wall if you're in comments later. I hope that you will leave a like, subscribe, follow, do all the social media things. Please share it on social media as well if you find this interesting or something that's important. If you're on Twitch, you can go ahead and create clips of things that you think are insightful or useful for creating games. And I would love to engage with anybody out there who is currently running a game or talking about D&D. So thank you and welcome here. Now, the purpose of this channel is I like to just talk about my game design elements, where we're going with the game, ideate through things that might be interesting, talk about the interesting concepts behind running D&D from the actual table perspective. One of the things that I think is lacking a little bit about online talk is that people tend to make these absolute statements when in fact gaming is quite messy. Running games with real people involves all the complexities of social situations and rules and the personal dynamics, narrative elements, and everything else that you might imagine from multiple genres converging in one place. Plus, all on top of all of that, you're basically running an event. You're hosting people at either your house or online, and it's a difficult prospect. So most people online will say things like, if you run into X problem, just do Y, and everything sort of magically works out. And that's not really true in my experience with gaming. So I just wanted to talk about gaming in terms of its wonderful messiness and everything involved in bringing a real game to life, either online or at the table. Now, as I'm filming this video, we're in the midst of a COVID epidemic, so everybody's running online. I'm currently running an online game using Foundry Virtual Tabletop. It's been extremely successful for me. And what I'm going to do here is talk a little bit for a half hour or so about game theory and game design and maybe some of the backstory and the results of things that we've talked about in previous shows, and then get into it after 20 minutes or so to the future game design. So we hit an interesting milestone in our campaign last time. The players have just hit 3rd level, and I designed the adventures such that they have an arc that they came in to the region, had to go through a bunch of discovery, get their feet under them in terms of their abilities and their capabilities, and now feel like that they've got a foothold in the region, at least. Not a firm foothold, that doesn't come until tier 2, but a foothold in the region that they have some capabilities, they know where they're heading. And I, as a game master, sort of have a feel for what the players themselves are enjoying. This is a new group mostly for me. I've had one player who is who's been with me in a campaign previously. They're all great players. So if you're in the campaign, by the way, and you're joining me, welcome. You should be fine for this until about 20 minutes into it. Then I'll give a cue that maybe it's time to step out to talk about where the adventure is going, because I have some interesting things planned that I really hope will go off well. So the game design techniques that I use for anybody joining me new or seeing this later, I tend to use the techniques from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master by Sly Flourish. I highly recommend that as a great purchase for any GM who wants to get a feel for how to organize their session notes. Now, there's lots of tools and frameworks out there, and if you've seen my previous streams, you know I use several. There's this idea of fronts that comes out of Dungeon World. There's the 5-Room Dungeon framework that comes out of early 2000s discussion of gaming and game theory, and there's the Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, and they're all targeted at different aspects of gaming, and none of them are absolute. It's not like you just do X and everything works out. They have a place, they have a role, but nothing is a panacea. Nothing solves everything for you automatically and creates no problems for the future. So like any tool, if you're using it for the right reason, you're going to get something out of it. If you're not using it for the right reason, you're probably going to run in circles and get yourself a little frustrated. But let me cover quickly what the lazy dungeon master technique is. Basically, it's just every session, I have a set of session notes, I think, and I'm using Notion SO. By the way, I usually get a question every time someone's viewing it later about this. It's just an online tool. I find it easy, which is what I want, and easy to link stuff back and forth and create new notes. So I started at about session 3 using this. I had been using OneNote previously. So our upcoming session will be session 6. Again, if I have a player here, I don't think I do, but if I have a player here, no spoilers in this just yet. But the technique is to list the players out at the top of the notes for your session, your upcoming session. I list quickly what the character is in their background, and then some player notes, just traits that I notice about the characters as they go on. I write a little thing about where we were, although this is actually done because we've finished that, and I'll get to where we were in a second. What themes I want to make sure I'm always going back to. I'm a big basics person, and so let's start off with a piece of advice for dungeon masters or even players. Basics are always a good idea. I've been gaming for almost 40 years. I've been running games almost that entire time, and no matter how advanced you get, and there's a small line of toxicity in the player community in terms of credibility. You go into these weird discords where someone makes authoritative statements as if absolute statements had any place in tabletop gaming, and that's not really where it's at. You don't learn something and then move on and never have to come back to it. If you want to stay fresh, if you want to stay relevant, if you want to stay sort of up to task, it's worthwhile to cycle back to just basics, which is why I find these techniques really useful for me. I got that actually from when I used to box. I used to do some recreationist fighting with swords as well, and I was pretty good, to be honest, in my younger days as was. And I found myself that the more you can do basic drills, the better and better you become. You can mess with advanced techniques, but at the end of the day, most of your successes are going to be based on how solid your basics are, and that applies to game mastering. Do you have sort of a plot? Do you have hooks? Do you have fantastic locations? Are you sticking to a central theme so it's not confusing over time? And I struggle with all these things, by the way. I'm not even after 40 years of game mastering, I'm still a beginner at all of this, and I find myself developing a discipline by always having a framework to use to pull me back to basics. And that's what I recommend for you. So that's what this does. So themes, it keeps me check every element I put into the game. Does it apply to a theme I'm trying to stick to? What plot threads are in the game? Maybe don't read that if you're one of my players. Come up with a strong start, which last session was fight with the cold-hearted, the people from the cold-hearted killer thread, if you know Rime of the Frostmaiden, basically tribal warriors hidden in a cave. So I actually don't know where that's going to be this time, so it'll be interesting. Potential scenes, that's another one I really don't know. And what secrets and clues are happening in it, and then important NPCs and fantastic locations. The great thing about each one of these techniques is it really sits you down and it helps you think through, let's don't just say it's some tower somewhere, and let's add elements to it that make it truly unique and truly different. And really, sometimes you got nothing. Sometimes you come back with nothing, and that's one of the many interesting things about running a game is it's a creative process that has a deadline, and deadlines are economic, and sometimes they force this immense creativity because of the economy of the whole thing. But other times you just got nothing, and you got to go with what you got, and you develop a discipline of that. You develop a way to stop undermining yourself, to get rid of this voice of self-doubt, because I'm going to run a game this week, and you know what? If it doesn't work out, I'm going to run another game next week, and maybe we'll work it out then. And you know that over the course of your lifetime as a game master or as a player, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to get used to it. Now, a fascinating topic that always comes up in gaming is this idea of anxiety. And player anxiety, GM anxiety is always prevalent. It's always present. I always have it. Don't think that I'm implying that will go away. Again, after 40 years, there's a small moment before every session that I have with myself that I think, why am I doing this to myself? Why I'm nervous that there's a bunch of techniques you can use that are probably beyond the scope of this video, but let's just start by saying the fundamental thing you can do for your anxiety as a player, as a DM, is accept you're going to have a little anxiety and don't let it stop you. People do things every day, all the time, with anxiety. They make it through it. You're going to have a little bit of anxiety. It's going to pass probably for you once you start, and just be okay with that. So that's my first piece of advice. There's a whole other techniques I'll do videos on for gaming anxiety a little bit later, but that's my starting advice. So these frameworks help me work through those processes and establish a discipline to stay focused. I'm more focused, at least, on what I'm trying to do. I have a bad tendency to go off-roading a lot in a lot of these places. So we'll get to this in a second, because I have a lot to do crafting-wise for this upcoming session that we're going. Now, Rime and the Frostmaiden, there's a lot of talk about this, and I'll give some advice on my experience 6 sessions in, about to go into my 6th session, about composition for that game. It's an interesting module because it has a lot of individual adventures. These are designed to run kind of separately with loose ties through them, but I like to go back and I like to develop through lines for the entire thing. So campaign so far is basically opened with a starter adventure coming into the region to sort of introduce the concepts of the region and introduce the players. I set up this plot line involving the Duragar trying to cut off supply lines into Icewind Dale that'll pay off later, and maybe as we approach tier 2. They get into the main city of Brandshander. They encounter this bounty hunter who wants to hire all of them to track down this killer who this is the cold-hearted killer quest. If you're familiar with Rime of the Frostmaiden, that was essentially just a go to this place and kill this person quest. I beefed that up significantly. The backstory there was that a member of the Tiger tribe who had been outcast because of cannibalism now is coming back in because there's a subplot in amongst the Tiger tribe. I think this is out now. If you're a player, I don't think this will spoil anything for you. There's a subplot there that the Tiger tribe of the Reghed nomads, I think it's pronounced. They're trying to become the chosen people of Auriel, who's this goddess that's locked the area into this perpetual winter, and they are trying to recover artifacts from ancient epic heroes of the Reghed people, and trying to sort of set themselves up to be the only last man standing at the end of this sort of terrible winter that Auriel is bringing in. So that's one plot line. So to this end, this Torga Icevane, who's the head of this caravan with this zombie that's come in, she'd been going through killing people to sort of get warlock kind of powers. It's not class-based, it's sort of this narrative-based. And the party has been following them across several adventures, getting more information as they go. The other plot line is that within the 10 towns, there's a group called the Chardinal? Is that how you pronounce it? Well, anyway, the Chardinal Syndicate, which is an extension of the mafia that's basically trying to control supplies in and out of 10 towns. And there's a subplot behind them where there's maybe some, I don't want to reveal it just in case a player is here, but there's maybe some relationship to the Duragar, and not so coincidentally, the first session opened with the Duragar trying to cut off legitimate supply lines. So there's a good foreshadowing there of where we're going to go. And I intend that to be sort of in the tier 2 play once we enter it. So that 5th level and above. We're still they just hit 3rd level. So we're going 3rd and 4th. We really want to come through some other climax. So the climax is they catch this killer. They unravel a few plots. I did the beautiful mine quest as well with this ghost in this mine that I tied that to that cold-hearted killer quest. They track this killer over to Kevin's Cairn. The climax is this fight in a tomb of an ancient Reghed warrior to recover this item, and it worked out better than I could have imagined. It was really, at least from my perspective as a game master, I hope the players thought that too, although they seemed to like it. So it was this huge climactic fight. They were 2nd level. They go in, they fight it out with a bunch of tribal warriors. They get up to the entrance of this tomb. They start fighting it out with this Sefik Caltro character from the book, who still basically had the stats, which is they're an undead that can summon ice swords and regenerate a little bit of power, a little bit of hit points in between turns, and they do quite a bit of damage. And then the backstory was that the head of the caravan is up in the tomb, having recovered this artifact, performing this ritual. The players didn't know, but I was giving them 3 rounds basically before this person attuned to the magic item, which let them transform, polymorph into a tiger. So boy, were the stakes high. So the players run in there, and this is great for talking about how much variance there are in games. I expected the fight with Sefik to go a little bit faster, but on the very first round of the combat, Sefik hides behind a pillar, and the barbarian character comes running up to try to do a fight, and he was readying an action to just hit the first person that comes around the pillar. So he crits. There's some cold damage dice on top of this longsword damage dice. It does like 29 points of damage in a single hit to a second level character. He goes down like that. Now, let's talk about this because it's interesting from character design. People have, I think, justifiably showed some concern about this Sefik Cultro, the Cold Hard Killer quest, because in the book it's not quite clear. Do you do it at first level? Do you do it at third level? And people are arguing back and forth about it. I don't want to get into that argument. What's important out of this is that even at second level, 29 points is enough damage to outright kill many characters. If that had hit the wizard in the game, the second level character Nim, our gnomish wizard, he has, I think, he's probably already gone up to 12. He has 12 hit points. The critical damage rule in the game is if you get hit and you're negative your max hit points, you die automatically, no rolls. So had that hit Nim, dead immediately. There is a ranger that would have, he had 16 hit points. That would have brought that character almost to the point of instantly killing them. So the only ones that could have survived would have been the paladin and the barbarian. So that's an interesting element, that like the swinginess of the dice guarantees you nothing, and you're in a position as a GM of what could go wrong here. And I still think you have to approach that adventure with caution. Now, our combat went okay. The barbarian was out. I fudged a little bit, not out of trying to save the party, but I fudged a little bit by letting, they were out of healing. They expended all their resources really honestly on things they didn't need. They were fighting these low-level tribal warriors, and they just burned up all their healing, all of everything else, and didn't search the rest of the cave where they had hidden some healing potions. So they went into that combat with no healing left on them. The barbarian goes down very first round of the fight, which is going to be a long and epic fight, which lasted like an hour. As a game master, I just don't want that character to just sit there on a Zoom call, because we're running online, for an hour doing nothing. That is not interesting to me. Certainly not interesting to the party or the barbarian character itself. So I allowed an ad hoc rule where they could roll a medicine check with an action to try to wake the character up. It had to be a DC 20 medicine check, so they failed a few times. I countered by giving them a little bit of room to do it, because this Sefik Cultro character was getting hit, bringing them down in hit points. But since they could regenerate every turn while they were in a cold area, I had them sort of dodge and give the players a little bit of time to get the other character up. They eventually get that character up. He hears the tiger roaring from the other side of the tomb door, goes open, opens the door, does a rage and a massive amount of damage to the tiger in one shot, and then immediately goes down again as the tiger mauls them. So this whole thing plays out where the tiger's coming in, Sefik is coming back out, all the players are going down, the ranger's out there, the tiger comes around, mauls the ranger, and just rah, 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 really take him down like that. And the tension, I did not end up fudging really those rolls, which is I sometimes will do, but I'm loath as a game master do it. But I can tell you, I was super tempted, because I had a few moments of, oh boy, what have I done? Because the players were down, Nim went down, the wizard went down easily. The ranger went down eventually, and it ended up that the Sefik, who's the undead, is attacking with the tiger, and the only one left was the paladin. So she's going back and forth, fighting between these two. She didn't, I think, realize it, but I had set it up that the spirit of Cultro, this undead character, was tied to the tiger. So if she takes the tiger out, Sephic's spirit goes away, which is what she did by chance. I don't think she did it knowingly, but she takes out the tiger. Sephic goes down. It was this huge epic moment. She falls down. Oh my God, I think she had something like 8 hit points left, a single remaining character. But this was on the edge of a total party kill, and I had nothing if she had gone down. Normally what I do if I lose characters is the villains will capture them, gloat, get the party angrier, give them a reason. I tend not to run the world where they just cut everybody's throat if they're down, because the players will tend to react in kind to a world that is set up that way. And if I bring a villain in that would do that, this is actually another great piece of, I think, a great piece of GMing advice. Save true evil for moments of climax. Don't sort of see the world as this sort of really crappy place to move in, where everybody is out to cheat and everybody. I mean, if you want that theme, you can go ahead. God bless you. But if you set that up, then that just dilutes the climax of the story into other places. What's the difference between one evil thing and another evil thing? Yeah, maybe power, hit points, damage, but what are you accomplishing narratively as a game master? I think that's a big question there. So I don't like to do it. People are not murder hobos themselves, because I don't want players to be murder hobos. So they just wait. They'll leave people to die, or they'll move on, or they'll stabilize them and capture them, generally speaking. And the NPC that will kill a down player is the rare occasion, save for someone that I can make the stakes clear. And that's, I guess, another piece of advice. A great technique for any game and any game master is to have a clear set of stakes for an encounter. Are we talking about death? Is the failure and the death or the loss of some important element to the player characters, like an NPC or treasure, is that on the line? Are we talking about just something that's inconvenience, where they just shucks it and they go back to town and lick their wounds and it really doesn't matter to them? What's the stakes? What's at stake for this fight? Certainly hit points, the player surviving, is at stake, but narratively across the world, what's at stake in this fight with Sephicaltro? What was at stake was that the Tiger Tribe, trying to enhance the winter and put even more pressure on all the good people of Icewind Dale, would have been even more behind the gun, because now the enemy, the Tiger Tribe, has an important artifact and more important capabilities. So the stakes were that the area that is already suffering would have deepened their suffering. It would have made it even harder to bring in supplies. It would have made it even harder for the tribal people to survive. And the players were bought into that. Why do they care? Is always a big reason. Well, the heroes have set out, the players have set out that they want to be heroes, or at least they're trying to discover the hero within them. That seems to be a theme running through my entire party. So I've set that storyline up for them. All right, so let's get up. So where they come out of it, they get a bunch of good magic items. They've collected all of the stuff. They head back to Bryn Shander to sort of turn in this quest to the bounty hunter that hired them. There's some NPCs that they have to interact with. They realize that bounty hunter was dying, and they died by the time they got back. So this is sort of a legacy. I wanted to establish this passing of the torch, because this bounty hunter was very well known. One of the players sort of idolized them. So I really wanted to set up this attrition, the sense of loss and attrition within Icewind Dale, and this did it. So there's this feeling of the players now hit 3rd level. They all get their class specialty. So the wizard gets it before 3rd level, but most of the others choose their oath, or they choose their path as a barbarian, or their type of ranger, and now they just sort of have a firm set of footing. And there's this feeling of passing the torch, which, talking about frameworks earlier, that's another element of a framework called the hero's journey. Hero's journey, you can look it up in narratives. Star Wars does it. Everything is always done it. The players start off with some mentor or some figure pushing them along, and that figure eventually dies and passes the torch. That's a part of the hero's journey epic. This was my way of creating that within the campaign for the players to feel like, although they weren't deeply attached to this NPC, it gave them an attachment and a context to the narrative thread of the region. So I chose to do that. It ended up working out very well. And the players are back now in Bryn Shander, which is the main city, and they're wondering what to do next. It's this great checkpoint. Now, as a GM, the next stage is kind of hard to do because what I want to do, and I don't know if the players want to do it, I want them to take some downtime. I want them to sort of regroup, figure out what they can do what their interests are as characters, what they want to move forward with, and I have a few seeds from here. So, full spoilers for Rime and the Frostmaiden. I've talked a little bit about my in particular mix of it. I don't think it's terribly spoilerific previous to this. So going forward, if you're a player in my game and you're in the stream, go away. Because I'm going to talk about what we're doing in next session and what I want to set up. I would love to hear from you, by the way, in this chat. So if you have ideas for this, because I'm actually looking for ideas. I'm trying to ideate in my head what are the next steps. So the players have gone through, set up initial success. They're ready to go on their next step. One of the challenges of this module is this persistent attrition coming from Oriel, the goddess who's locked the area in perpetual night. So there's every month a bunch of sacrifices the town have to make, anywhere from human sacrifices to like food and warmth. And people are leaving every month with these caravans. They're starving more and more over time. Supplies are dwindling. Infrastructure is failing. So there's a sense of a ticking clock that the players have. In these cases, it makes it very difficult to take a breather and give the players some downtime for them to pursue character interests, scribe scrolls, create potions, talk to NPCs, buy items, do all of this stuff. I think the players are okay with that right now. We've just passed the checkpoint of the new moon, so they're feeling a little space between now and the next new moon. So I want them to take that on. I also want next session to be have a little bit more levity. The previous 2 sessions were pretty oppressive. They were pretty pushing down on the characters. Like every wilderness journey involved a lot of time, and they're freezing, and it took a long time, and it was obvious how much it cost them. Every encounter really cost them. It was a near-death encounter at the session before this, where there was a ghost that almost leapt the character into the Underdark and killed them. So they've gone through these really challenging edge case scenarios, and now I want to give them a little bit breather before they head out. So, and they're set up narratively, again, the pacing, I like when I say this worked out well. They've got a bunch of axe peaks. You can see the axe peaks at the end. If they name them, I'll give them names on this sort of splash screen. I'm calling this chapter 2. It does not map to the chapters in the book. But I want to do 2 more adventures, basically 2 more full scenarios. I want to give them a setup, go through 2 more full scenarios to get them to the end of 4th level so that they can go out in the greater area, what would actually be in Rime and the Frostmaiden. Chapter 2, Icewind Dale itself. So we're still in Chapter 1 adventures. And the way that we're doing milestone, which I love for this case because it lets you time adventures very well, like leveling it very well to sort of accomplishments of the players. So the idea is they had to do 3 of these 10 adventures, which is great. There's 10 adventures. Like the replayability of this module is pretty good. They've done Foaming Mugs right here. They've done A Beautiful Mind right here. And they've done Cold Open. Again, heavy mixes on my part, but essentially it's 3 to get the 3rd level. Now they need 2 more to get the 4th level. I thought about making it 3 more, but honestly, these are multi-session adventures. So we're probably going to see 2 more is probably good timing-wise. I'm debating because a couple of these I don't like. A couple of them are pretty good. The Mead Must Flow is pretty good. White Moose is okay. Mountain Climb is pretty good. But we've already been to Targus. But the two I'm looking at doing. So what do I think going forward? I think what we're going to do is this Black Swords quest and Toil and Trouble. I like them. Toil and Trouble is this quest where they go to East Haven, they encounter some back plot with the Arcane Brotherhood that's of interest to a player, and then they go to find these missing people and have the potential to discover a magic item that a hag is having. So she's got this. On the other side of the lake, there's this ice cave that she's held up in. There's a couple of interesting items in the ice cave, and the players have the potential of recovering this cauldron, which helps feed people, which is a major theme of the campaign so far. So it's some treasure. It's a great hag is a great. Oh, I love hags. It's going to always make for great combats, and then they can recover this magic item that's more of a strategic one for the towns itself. They can decide who they want to give it to, and this back plot of basically the Chartland Syndicate the criminals essentially a criminal syndicate trying to take over the 4 towns versus the sort of the good people of the 10 towns. it'll help them pick a winner in that case. And there'll be some second tier adventuring. Black Swords is another interesting adventure. It's shared Dinaval. So they're sort of held up. These cultists are held up in a castle, and there's some more Arcane Brotherhood. Now, my challenge as the GM is I'm sort of dumping the Arcane Brotherhood plot. I don't like it because it's a post. Anyway, it happens after the main storyline. So I want to get rid of that basically and not use it. So I need to come up with something else for the Arcane Brotherhood. I've thought about tying them to this political fight between the Chartland Syndicate / Duergar Alliance, but I don't know. I think I'm going to throw in some end of tier 2 adventure with them wanting to get something related to Oriel. And this is there's a technique in software engineering called agile development, which you sort of look around the corner to what things do you need next to happen. And that's what I'm doing for that. The concept is if you delay making decisions, you can actually get more information about what needs to happen there, and make a better decision later on. That works for game mastering too. You can see what the players are reacting to. You can drop a couple plot threads and potential, that J.J. Abrams style of storytelling. However, the downside of that is you get to a point later on where you have to tie those threads together, and maybe you just don't know how to do it. Maybe you're disconnected in your threads, and J.J. Abrams is particularly bad at that. I think many people would say, I would certainly say. So I'm careful not to do that. So really where I'm at is I want to drop hints of the Arcane Brotherhood. I know they're looking for some artifact. I want to set it up that if they recover this artifact, this will tie into a personal story for one of the players. The wizard character, his whole character motivation is they want to become a famous wizard in this scholarly environment. The actual player is just getting their PhD. So this speaks to the player's taste, right? They want in the scholarly environment of wizards, they want to make some great discovery to make a huge name for themselves. So I'm going to set something like that up. I don't know what the MacGuffin is yet, but the Arcane Brotherhood is looking for that. I'm going to say at some point it's in Oriel's possession, and they don't want to go because that would be suicide for them. So I'll set them up as basically an antagonist for when the players actually go to face Oriel. So that's at level 7, 8. We're not there yet. I just need to tease them looking for some magic item. And if I can come up with a great idea between now and then, I'll plant some foreshadowing. But so I need to limit myself to just saying some magic item without making a commitment. So make it interesting without undermining myself and painting myself into a corner. That's just the hazards of game mastering and creating a narrative. You got to do that. So that's far off in the future. What I want to do now, though, is I want to set up this confrontation, because the storyline, now they just hit 3rd, the storyline for them for 3rd and 4th level is going to be the direction of the 10 towns, and can they free themselves from this fight between the Chartland Syndicate trying to own the 10 towns and the previous Speakers Council, who are basically good but not together. The underlying plot of this is that the Duergar they want a supply line for their fight with Mithril Hall. Again, this is my mix. I've totally changed this. There's a story in the module that relates to a Chartland dragon, which actually I don't like because I just did Dragon of Icespire Peak before this, and I don't want to do another dragon in town destroying the town scenario. So I'm coming up with this instead, which is a political scenario where the Duergar want to secure Icewind Dale as a supply point to give them supplies of Chartland, because I've set them up that they use muskets. Essentially, they're able to turn Chartland into kind of a gunpowder that lets them use muskets, and that fuels their fight with Mithril Hall to the south. And they just want a standard supply line. So they're bringing supplies in through the Underdark, giving them to the Chartland Syndicate, or sort of handing it out to the town folk to feed them, to gain favor with them. And at the same time, the Duergar are trying to cut off the supply line of food and things being brought into the region that the legitimate leaders of the towns are doing to make them look bad. So that's not complex. That's the core plot there. So what I imagine is the players are going to go discover more of the intrigue in the major players for the Charterland Syndicate, run across their individual desires, and then sort of undermine them and sort of pull them apart. So they have to eventually go take out the Duergar, which are necessary for this Charterland Syndicate to hold power, because the only thing they have are these supplies. So once they do that, that'll unravel that whole plot. So that's my outlet. I'll still use Sunblight's Citadel. I won't use this Destruction Light Chapter 4 because that's the dragon. I don't really care about any of that. But that's my thread. So what we'll do is we'll do Toil and Trouble. I want to tie that also to one of the players' backstories. Another great thing. You need to have... I've got 4 players, which is a small number compared to a lot of games, but there's a backstory for each one of these players I want to work into a series of adventures. I don't buy into the Matt Mercer effect. I don't think Matt Mercer is harmful in any way, shape, or form to tabletop, but this is my sort of, I'm trying to stage it the way he does it, where if you look at Critical Role is a great example. He didn't invent this, but you take a block of adventures and you focus on another player's story for that to give them some room. The downside of that is even with a small group of 4 players, I can tease other player stories, but if I'm going to give them a focus, it's very difficult because the last player to get a focus in that sort of, if we do like 3 adventures, that may not come till 6th or 7th level, and they've got to be patient to get through that. So we started off with a focus on Store, this barbarian whose path has been to accept the rage within him and come to peace with his heritage. So he's done that with this pursuit of because he's a reghead nomad. He's from the Wolf tribe. He's done that a little bit with his pursuit of this epic quest for the Tiger tribe. They've defeated that person. They've recovered the major artifacts of the Tiger tribe. There's a tease to him that one of these artifacts exists for the Wolf tribe that he's from, and that he's been living in a cave because he's got the hermit background. He's been living in a cave with it in it the whole time behind this secret door that he discovered in this different tomb. So at some point he might want to take a trip there and do something with it. That's another good element to talk about here. Flow of the game. So the players are in Bryn Shander right here. I use this little marker for players on the map. They need to go back to Kevin's Cairn where that player character's hermitage was, but if I send them off in this westerly direction, they won't be anywhere near it. It'll be really weird. So the 2 adventures I'm planning are at East Haven, right over here, and then over at Sher Dinaval. I'd love to do the Sher Coning quest, but I don't like it, and that's where the character's from. I don't know. I don't like it, so I'm probably going to ignore that quest. So I'll do East Haven, I'll do Sher Dinaval, and then they'll probably get over to Kevin's Cairn to recover that artifact, I think. I have no idea. So before all that goes, next session I think is mostly going to be downtime. I want to get them a patron. So I have this thing called the Tower of the Mammoth. And I'm kind of excited about this, but I don't quite what to do with it. So the Tower of the Mammoth is this Luxodon Artificer Alchemist. I'm setting them specifically up of an Artificer Alchemist because I want them to be able to feed the players supplies that are one-shot magic items. I don't want to give them magic swords and all these sort of permanent magic items. I want them to find those as part of their quest. Last session, by the way, the Ranger got this killer bow that I created just for them that lets them it's a +1 bow, long bow, that also lets them cast Hunter's Mark so they don't have to burn up their Ranger spell slots to do it. And of course, they were over the moon about it and they really loved it. They had the potential to get that skin back to let them polymorph into a tiger, but the players chose to cut that up instead, which was a really interesting role-playing choice. So next session, I want to focus a little bit more on the paladin character, who honestly the player hasn't given me much of a background. They like vaguely want to reestablish their house. I don't think they're going to do much of a background. They're not really into these long storylines. So I'm going to make it very basic. I want them to converge on this Tower of the Mammoth. There'll be a Luxodon alchemist there who used to run with the Paladin's grandmother back in the day. And actually, she was the grandmother and grandfather were adventurers in this region. They used to go with this Luxodon when they were young. And they all actually recovered this tower from a Veerberg, I think it's called. It's a giant race. And now I found this great piece of art for that place on Art Station, I think it's called. So let me just see. I have my locations here. I do a lot of fantastic locations. Tower of the Mammoth. Look at that picture. Man, I love that picture. So there's going to be this hot springs fueled waterfall coming out of a hillside that tumbles down this icy region and is continuing to turn all of these complex water wheels. So just this network of water wheels around doing things like distilling potions and making items and all of this stuff. And I want the players to go there and sort of have that as a refuge that they can go to, a patron to supply them with information, and other adventures to go on, and then talk a little bit about the backstories for the characters. So the path I generally want, and I need to create some secrets here. As I mentioned before, I use the Lazy DM's prep technique. So I burn through all of the secrets. I don't have a strong start. So it's in Bryn Shander is going to be the strong start. Usually you try to start out with some bang, but I don't want to do that because we've had so much pacing with characters before and some big adventures and stuff like that. So I will have some Chartland Syndicate based supply story. People, it's right after the new moon, so this is the area where they're most needy. So we'll have some riot. Well, that's what we'll say. We'll start with a riot over supplies set out by Arnold. I don't remember his name. I have an NPC I established at the end of Foaming Mugs who killed one of the NPCs that I said was involved as an inside job. That was my mix. So I'll create Arnold Beats. That's it. And supplies set out by Arnold Beats to undermine the speaker. All right, so that's what we'll have. We'll have some kind of riot like that. The players know that they have Dohas that they want to go to. I think what to happen there is Dohas is unable for some reason to do a lot. I want that to be a potential supply line for the cities here, making food, potions, whatever. But if this super rich NPC is sitting around not doing anything, that's makes them kind of a jerk, right? And if they are doing things, there's no stake in it for the players. So I want to have I want to create this sense of things would have gone south here except for the players' involvement, that they were the element, and I do this in all my campaigns, that they were the element that had they not come to that situation, things would have went poorly. They would have went one way rather than the other, which the players have some agency to do. So I need secrets to be able to do that. So the only secret left is Doas has been holding up in his compound trying to make a few magical items that supply food in order to help the 10 towns. I'm going to undo that secret. I'm going to say that they're unable to make supplies for the 10 towns because I don't know. If anybody has a recommendation, please make it in chat. 10 towns because So I want them to. So I know I want them to go to East Haven, assuming the players go to Dohas, which I can nudge them that way, and they seem like their chat from last game. That seems likely. But so another piece of GM advice. I try to run sandbox stuff, but there's this sort of tacit agreement between players. The sandboxes are never quite sandboxes. Sometimes they are, but there's this tacit agreement that if you feed them hooks, the players will bite, right? So you should give enough information and listen to the table talk enough from the previous session to have an idea where the players want to go. And then if they want to go a place that you want them to go, or you feel like you can create something for it, don't mess it up with more information. Let that play out. Let them get a trajectory, and then add more information later. So don't interrupt yourself in the midst of success with failure. Don't snatch failure from the jaws of success, I think they call it. So remember to do that. So I want them to come out. There'll be this riot in town. They'll know these supplies that are happening. They've got some. They'll be unsure where to go next. I don't want to tease them a next adventure. I'll just they've already shown interest in going to Dohas, so I'll let them do that. So they go up there, they discover he's unable to make supplies, but he wants to. I might add some more story there about them being sort of shunned, and now this is sort of a justification, and they can make good again with the great towns, but I don't know what that would be. So anyway, I know I want the next adventure to be this East Haven adventure. So if I have Dohas need something from East Haven to do their supplies, I think that would do it. But what will that be? Because what will happen, what that Toil and Trouble adventure is the way it's written is they go to East Haven, the players, they burn alive this person, which actually I'm not going to do either. So first of all, burning someone alive, that's not cool. I don't want to play that out. But second, it doesn't actually fit with the genre. There's more importantly, the idea that I've set up the idea that trees are sort of in high demand. People build their houses out of stone and some thatch, but they don't use trees because there's not a whole lot in the region. And if you look at the map, there isn't. So instead, what I'm going to have them do is dump this person in a lake. So they're going to carve a hole in the lake, put chains around them, and then just throw them into the lake and let them drown, which makes absolutely no difference other than thematically, and it's kind of horrific in and of itself. And then, so what's supposed to happen is they get there, they discover this person being executed for being a murderer. They then the players pick up a quest to find some lost, I think it is, fishermen who went out and went missing. So the players look for them, find them on the edge of the lake, and find this this entrance into this cave where a hag is inside and a bunch of other stuff. Now, so I want to give them more context than that. So so the two things, what do I want out of this? What I want out of this, and let me write it in the secrets. I'll put a question mark to know that this is a question for myself. I want them to recover something that lets Dohas make items for the region. I also want, so the other thing I want to tie to a background. This Dohas character knew the paladin's grandparents. I'm going to say, so, okay, this was becoming clear. The Dohas has to know about the hag, has to, right? So this thing that he wants that will make him, I will say, okay, so that will make him effective to make supplies is she's stolen. So I'll say the hag has stolen this. It's an old enemy of his. And he's too old. He's very old. He can't go adventuring anymore. So she's stolen this item that prevents him from, that prevents him from making these alchemical items that would feed the town. I will make her a old nemesis of the grandparents, because hags can be old as they want to be, and that the grandmother's fabled shield, which is an item I want to create for this player character, is lost in her lair. So yes, that's exactly what I want. So the hag has stolen. Let me take this out. Hag has stolen the some, we'll say some crystal, magic crystal, that lets him distill potions. He wants it back. He also, this is the same hag nemesis from grandmother's backstory. All right, so I will say the player remembers a family story that they left after losing to this hag. That was their one thing that the grandmother couldn't do, and that the grandmother had lost her fabled shield there, lost fabled shield with the family crest on it. With family crest. Now, here's a great piece of advice I have. I design magic items. I hate bonus magic items. Not hate them. I don't hate anything. I find them uninteresting because they're just a bonus. I mean, that's nice. It does come out in the mix, and players like them, of course. But I like items that give you an ability, that lets you customize the things you want to do. So looking at this player, now this is the thing, I've listened to my player. Last session, I mean, she's not a rules heavy person, so she doesn't quite get that, like, pushing someone is another action, and if you already made an attack, you can't do a push action. So she she's repeatedly, excuse me, sorry about that. She's repeatedly been trying to say after her attack, oh, and then I slammed him with my shield and push him to the ground. And I keep having to say, that's not how it works. You can't do that. So, but that is a cue as a DM, and this is what I recommend you do as a DM. That's a cue that the player clearly wants that capability. They clearly love this idea of pushing around people with their shield. They're even naming their item. So that's a huge flag. So that's why I've been having in the back of my mind, this player would like a shield. Just like the bow I created for my ranger, that person is constantly using Hero's Hunter's Mark on the person. Is burning up spell slots. It prevents them from doing all these other neat things they can do. They've even lamented that a little bit. So I gave them an item that would let them cast Hunter's Mark a few times a day, and they're not burning up their spell slots. So now they feel like, oh, I have all these more options. So what I want to do with this shield is give them something that pushes opponents back or knock them out. So I'll create the shield this week, and I'll even post it on Twitter, so look for that. But it's a shield that will maybe give a +1 to AC, but more to the point, it will let them... and I'm actually not sure the design is. It'll let them cast Thunder Wave a certain number of times a day, maybe once a day. Maybe they can burn a. I'm theory crafting here. It's nice if you can tailor to the player character. So I can either say they can do it a number of times per day. I think a number of times per day is a little bit much with on top of everything else they can do. They're already a paladin. They can do a lot. So I could either just say it's once a day, or I might tie it to their use of Channel Divinity, or I might tie it to their smite ability. Like it burns a spell slot. It burns a smite. Well, smite and spell slot are the same thing. So it either burns a spell slot on their end, or it burns their Channel Divinity. I don't know. I'm tempted to do once per day, just because the other stuff is too complex for this player. I don't think they like keeping track of burned items and charges and stuff. And if we just say it's once per long rest, it's easy for them. So that's what I'll do. I'll say it's a +1 shield that lets them cast Thunder Wave once per day. So they have this cool thing that they can hold on to. And once per day, they can go ahead and Thunder Wave the crap out of people. It won't knock them to the ground, but it does knock them back and do some damage. It's a pretty good ability. So that's what I'll do. I'll say that this Dohas comes to the players and says, we have an old nemesis that your grandmother and I faced at one time, and we just couldn't defeat her, and it's been my greatest failure in life. And then name the hag, and that we lost our last battle against her in her lair where the shield went down. I have to merge that. Now my next challenge as the DM is I have to merge that, and I'm creating notes that I'll clean these notes up later. I have to merge that with the East Haven quest, which is the quest as written is the players are sent out to find some missing fishermen and happen to run across the cave. That's stupid. I don't want that. It's stupid in my setup. It's not stupid to the module. It's just it doesn't fit the way I want to set up. So instead I will say Dohas hired some townsfolk in East Haven to find the cave. We'll say adventurers even. We'll say not some townsfolk, some adventurers. But that'll create a nice set of stakes because the adventurers were lost and never came back. They were native, we'll say, to get supplies back. So that'll set the stakes that it's deadly. It'll set the stakes of a loss. It'll tie them to the town, talk to the town speaker, because the town speaker there is a good character. I want to tie Dohas back to the Harper's Guild. One of the players is a harper. So I'll say potential to recruit for the Harper's Guild. Recruit, RUIT, for Harper's Guild. Okay, that's great. Actually, we've got about 7 minutes left, so I think we're coming on. So I like that progression. So next session, what we're talking about is the players start off with a little bit of slack time. I do want to start with a bang with a riot, so I'll up the ante for the this Charlin Syndicate plot that's going on by having a small riot that happens in town, led by this Arnold Beats. Sandbox nature. Maybe the players decide they want to just go kill this guy. I don't really have anything for them to just go forth and justify killing him outright, but maybe they'll choose to do it. I don't know. but it'll set the tension in the town and increase the stakes as time goes by. They will go to Dohas, I hope. Get some introduction to their patron. They'll get some backstory on the paladin character. They will discover for the wizard's character, this will be an interesting person who knows a lot about artifacts and provides them with a base of operations to set up a study and use magic items. It will, for the other characters, not do a whole lot past that, but they will get this cue that they can help the region out to get a little bit more supplies if the alchemist can just recover this magical crystal that helped them produce potions and magic items faster. They will say that he sent a previous set of adventurers, so that sets a stake for them, that these adventurers were lost. They'll go to East Haven, contact them, find out some shenanigans. It's not enough time to go into that, but there's politics of some Durgar hiding in town that the players might uncover. There's the politics of, I need to create a specific named NPC to be the representative of the Chartland Syndicate there, but that'll be some stakes as well. They'll encounter the speaker, hopefully make some friends with them, but we'll see. Find out that the speaker hired the adventurers on behalf of Dohas, and the speaker wants them to go find them. So then they'll go out to the hag's site, find the player character's shield, the player character's grandmother's shield, and recover that. Fight the hag. And this sets them up for future adventures, because one of the great items in the book recovered from this is this cauldron that magically produces food. They'll bring it back, and there'll be a future set of adventures around the politics of who controls this cauldron. There'll be a heist attempted by the Chartland Syndicate to steal it. The players can get involved in that, but that's really a fourth level thing. They'll do this other adventure up in Shared Dwalden. I forget the name of the town, but they'll do this other, Shared Dinaval. They'll do that other adventure, and when they come back, this whole thing will be boiling over. So that's probably 2 months worth of content right there. That's great. I like it. That's really good. I feel pretty satisfied about that. That was great. Last piece of advice I'll give for anybody: if you've held on this long, you're a hero. You are a true hero. This is useful for me. Why do I do this, right? Why do I do this live stream? First of all, I actually want to connect with other people in the D&D and tabletop gaming community. So I would ask you, please go ahead and reach out, leave a comment down on the tavern wall. Go ahead and chat here in the. We didn't have any chats that I saw, so if I missed one, I'm sorry about that. But go ahead and leave a comment here if you have a question or a suggestion. And then follow me on Twitter. I'm optional rule there. So go ahead and follow me there. There'll be a big announcement on Twitter next week. I won't say what it is, but follow me on Twitter. And I have a big personal announcement to make next week, which I'm very excited about. So if you're following me, I hope you'll be excited for me too. But follow me there and engage in discussion. I love to talk about all things related to D&D. But why do I really do this is I need to prepare my adventure, and I love if I talk through these things, if I talk through my thought process. One, I hope it's of use to other people looking to run games, and it demystifies this whole thing of dungeon mastering. And two, it helps with, it's this rubber ducky thing. I have an IT background. In software engineering, there's this concept called the rubber ducky, which means if you're trying to create a piece of code and you're stuck, take a step back, get a rubber ducky, and try to explain to the rubber ducky what it is you're trying to do. And just that process of talking through it out loud to a fake object would help you uncover the things you need to do. So this is my DM's version of a rubber ducky, and I suggest you adopt that too if you're having trouble with it. By live streaming, first of all, you guys are not rubber duckies. I'm very happy to engage with you here, and I'm really always hoping that there'll be some conversation that happens a part of this. But just me saying these things out loud. What do I need? What do I want out of this? What is the most exciting thing I can do? What's the background item I'm connecting it to? Saying it out loud is an extremely powerful creative tool for me. It lets these ideas pop out. You might have seen when I started 20 minutes ago on this adventure, or half hour ago now, I didn't know what I was going to do with Dohas. And this whole idea of how he's connected to the hag, how he or she, I haven't decided yet. I think it's going to be a they, actually. I love the idea of putting an asexual person in the game, too. And really playing that. That connection to the hag, the player's backstory, all of that emerged out of me just talking through what am I doing here? What do I need? What do I not know? What can I punt on and just do some foreshadowing with? Those are immensely helpful things for me that help me condense down. And I did it. I'm doing it in an hour. So it's really not much time commitment. There's these horror stories of DMs preparing for 10 hours for a game or 8 hours. There's this competition almost amongst DMs. That's BS. I want to say that up front. This competition of I've spent more time on this game preparing. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Who cares? It only matters if you made it up on the spot and it was great. That's fantastic. Nobody cares. There's no a game prep of 4 hours is not necessarily better than a game prep of 1 hour. I try as an adult. I have a life like anybody else. I try to bound this within a good hour. It'll take me about a half hour to actually write the ideas that I've taken notes about here. But an hour and a half of prep for a weekly game is, I think, a pretty good pace. I think it's pretty good. And this set of stories and this set of plot line I came up with, that's going to feed a good month of content for me. So I'll start fine tuning it from here, but this is the broad arc of where we're going up through level 4 and beyond. All right. So that's it. We're right at the top of the hour. We're at the hour. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you will join me in future live streams as well. I hope you'll join me on Twitter, on all the social medias. Again, this is new. This is probably never going to grow to become huge, but I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like, if you could leave a comment, a thumbs up. You can follow, you can subscribe, you can share it, especially if you were to found it useful. Create a clip on Twitch, or link to a time period on your social media to say why it's useful. That would really be appreciated by me. And give me a shout out, please, on Twitter when you do, an optional rule. I hope you'll follow me on Twitter and engage me in conversation there. All right. So until next week, I hope you will join me then, and I hope you have a fantastic week of gaming. Go out and do something you think is interesting and creative. Keep your own juices flowing and run games. I hope to see more games being played, and I hope to hear about your game. So until next week, remember, fun is not optional, and thank you for joining me.